One way to increase the efficiency of motion when we're swinging is to think about holding our weapon like a hammer and swinging like a hammer towards a nail. So if my opponent's in front of me and I'm swinging for her arm, I'm going to think my nail is on her forearm, and I'm going to drop my weapon firm and angled across to her arm. I'm not going to swing down and through beyond her arm, or else I'm opening up my guard more than I have to in a given swing. By the same token, she's opening the other side and I throw a hack to her gut. I throw the hack and I immediately return my weapon back to guarding in front of my body. Part of good swinging is having a good recoil, pulling your guard from being forward to attack back to its natural position with your hand on your weapon in front of your own torso. Let's talk about a few simple ways to make any attacks we make much more likely to succeed. There's two main ways that we can do this. One would be taking a step or a slide while we are throwing our attack. For instance, if I want to strike my opponent's most open side of their body, not protected by their weapon, I might slide towards that side or take a large step. I have a lot more targets open to me as soon as I step towards that side. And it's opened up to me by taking a step in the direction that I intend to attack. The other basic way of setting up a strong offense is using feints. Feints are simply using the motion of your weapon to make your opponent think you're going one way when you in fact intend to go another. For instance, I could pump my weapon to one side of my opponent's body, trying to get them to block in response to where I'm not actually intending to throw my final swing. I capitalize on that by throwing to the opposite side that they've blocked. A short cross to her arm or her hip. You can capitalize this further by thinking about our two major axes. One is horizontal and one is vertical. Vertical feint will tend to make my opponent want to block at a horizontal angle. A vertical strike to her opposite shoulder, she's going to lift her guard perpendicular for a firm block. So if I feint that and get her to make a full block to a vertical shot that's not coming, a horizontal strike will end the fight. Vertical feint, horizontal strike. Similarly, a horizontal strike is going to compel my opponent to make a vertical block. A horizontal feint sets me up for a vertical strike. Or a horizontal feint sets me up to make a vertical strike. All I'm doing to feint is pumping my weapon very briefly in the direction I want to pull their guard. Notice I'm also subtly stepping or sliding to where I want my final shot to land. You can even advance this further by using your footwork to get to where your final strike is while you actually feint to the opposite side. Let me demonstrate. If I throw a feint with my weapon, a short cross to my opponent's inside, while sliding opposite that way, they're going to block even further from where I'm finally going to strike. I'm going to slide right as I throw a short cross across her body as a feint. Her guard is pulled way far away from where I actually want my final strike to be on her torso. Same thing in the opposite direction would be to throw a vertical feint to her open shoulder side and then actually slide to her inside, throwing a short cross to her hip. If we step way back to the beginning of this, when we talked about having arc, a rainbow, something that curves around my opponent's guard, this sets me up to have my guard, the position of my hands, relatively in front of my torso box at any given time. If you always think about keeping your elbows relatively close to your torso, rather than lifting them up outside of your torso rectangle, you're gonna stay safe. So if you think of that rectangular torso box, the more you drift outside your box, the more exposed you are. The idea is to keep your hand and your guard inside your torso box while throwing at angles that reach the outermost points of your opponent's torso box. I'm in line in front of my torso. I'm reaching around to hit the wide edges or stab the wide angles of my opponent's torso without lifting outside of my own torso box or going too wide outside of my own torso box. When we're talking about using sword and shield, there's a few subtle things that help us stay alive and keep intact. One thing is integrating our defense with our offense. And what I mean by that is, whenever I throw a shot, I'm always inherently going to expose some of my arm. It's going to be tempting for my opponent to counterswing on that arm. Especially if I'm dealing with a more reactionary or defensive fighter that's letting me make the first move, it can be dangerous to go straight away for a big shot trying to hit one of her torso target areas. So, how I can compensate for this is by covering my weapon arm as I swing. Most simple example, I go for a leg hack. If I'm really dipping into it, my arm's pretty exposed. Alternatively, I simply slide my shield edge with my swing. She's still compelled to go for that initially because of the way my torso is moving to get the leg strike. Notice the difference between if I hold my shield, pulling out forward with my weapon, or if I don't.